When you suddenly go silent, what happens when you stop texting her? Not after an argument, not after telling her you're busy. I'm talking about when you simply stop being everywhere. No good morning text, no random "what are you doing?" No checking whether she replied, no double texts, no trying to keep the conversation alive. At first, she may not think much of it. She may continue with her day. But then, something interesting can happen. She notices the change. And once someone becomes used to receiving your attention, the sudden absence of that attention can create a question in their mind. Wait, where did he go? And that question can be more powerful than another 10 messages from you. But here's the part most people misunderstand. Going silent doesn't automatically make a woman miss you. It doesn't magically create attraction, and it certainly isn't a secret trick that works on everyone. What silence can do is create space, and sometimes space reveals feelings that constant communication was covering up. Today, we're going to break down exactly what can happen psychologically when you suddenly become less available, why your absence can become noticeable, what she may think when you stop texting, why chasing can change the entire dynamic, and, most importantly, how to create healthy space without turning silence into manipulation. Because there is a huge difference between "I'm living my life" and "I'm ignoring you so you'll chase me." And by the end of this video, you'll understand that difference. 105. Introduction. The psychology behind your absence. Let's start with something simple. Human attention is strongly influenced by change. If someone gives you the same amount of attention every day, you eventually become accustomed to it. You know what to expect. You know when they'll text. You know how they'll respond. You know they're there. But when that pattern suddenly changes, your brain may notice. Think about it. Imagine someone always sends you a message around 8 p.m. One evening, nothing. You probably won't panic, but you might notice. Then another evening passes, and suddenly you're thinking, "That's strange. Why hasn't he texted?" The interesting thing is that the person didn't actually do anything. They simply stopped doing what they normally did. That's the power of contrast. Your absence becomes noticeable because your presence was previously predictable, and this is where curiosity can begin. Not necessarily romantic curiosity, not necessarily attraction, but curiosity. What changed? Is he busy? Did I do something? Is he losing interest? Has something happened? Why isn't he reaching out anymore? The mind doesn't always like unanswered questions, and when there is uncertainty, people sometimes start paying more attention. But remember, this isn't a universal female psychology rule. Women aren't robots. Every person has different experiences, attachment styles, personalities, expectations, and levels of interest. So don't listen to this video thinking, "If I ignore her for 3 days, she'll definitely come running." That's not psychology. That's a game. Instead, understand what healthy space can reveal. Curiosity. Why your absence can become noticeable. Here's an important psychological principle. People often notice change more than consistency. When you are always available, your availability can become normal, and something that becomes normal can become less consciously noticeable. But remove it, and suddenly the difference becomes visible. Imagine a room with a clock ticking. You hear it at first. Tick, tick, tick. After a while, you stop noticing it. Then the clock stops. Suddenly, you notice the silence. Your attention didn't increase because the clock became more important. You noticed because something changed. Human relationships can sometimes work in a similar way. If you are constantly initiating conversations, asking questions, sending memes, checking in, and keeping everything moving, she may simply become accustomed to your presence. But if you naturally become less available because you're focusing on your own life, she may notice the difference. And that's where our first major point begins. 220. Point number 5. Curiosity can increase when certainty disappears. When you suddenly become less available, one possible reaction is curiosity, not because you're manipulating her, but because the normal pattern has changed. She may wonder, what's he doing? Why hasn't he messaged? Is everything okay? Maybe he's talking to someone else.
Maybe I misunderstood how interested he was. Notice something. None of these thoughts necessarily mean she is in love. They simply mean the change has created a question, and questions can capture attention. Solution: don't manufacture mystery. Here's what you should do. Don't deliberately disappear just to create anxiety. Instead, build a life where you're not constantly waiting for someone's response. Go to the gym, work on your career, spend time with friends, read, learn something, work on your goals. Take care of yourself. And if you're genuinely busy, you don't need to apologize for having a life. Healthy confidence doesn't say, "I need to disappear so she'll miss me." It says, "I enjoy talking to her, but my entire day doesn't depend on her attention." That's a completely different energy. 435. What she may think when you stop texting. Now let's talk about texting. This is where many people make a huge mistake. They send one message, no response. Then another, still nothing. Then, hey? Then, did I do something? Then, are you mad? And eventually they're sending 5 messages while staring at the phone. The problem isn't that you care. The problem is that excessive chasing can create an unhealthy communication pattern. When you constantly pursue someone who isn't reciprocating, you communicate something without realizing it. I'll continue giving attention even when I receive very little back. And that can change the dynamic. When you stop over-investing, several things can happen. Maybe she notices. Maybe she feels relieved. Maybe she becomes curious. Maybe she doesn't care. And that's actually important because her reaction gives you information. If she genuinely enjoys talking to you, your absence may make her realize that she misses the connection. If she never reaches out or shows interest, that can also tell you something. Solution: match energy instead of chasing. Don't play games. Don't count hours. Don't intentionally wait 6 hours before replying because you think it makes you look valuable. Simply stop over-investing. If she sends one message, respond naturally. If she asks questions, engage. If she keeps conversations alive, participate. But if you're always doing 90% of the work, step back. Not to punish her, to protect your own emotional balance.
Point number 3. Why chasing can change the dynamic. Let's imagine 2 scenarios. In the first scenario, you text her constantly. You always initiate. You always ask where she is. You always want reassurance. You always try to keep her interested. Eventually, she knows you'll be there no matter what. In the second scenario, you show genuine interest, but you also have boundaries. You communicate. You listen. You make plans. But you don't chase someone who isn't meeting you halfway. Which dynamic feels healthier? The second one, because attraction isn't supposed to feel like an emergency. If someone likes you, you shouldn't have to constantly convince them to stay interested. And here's the deeper psychological lesson. Attention has more meaning when it is freely given, rather than desperately demanded. When you're constantly asking for attention, the interaction can become about reassurance. But when you're comfortable giving someone space, the interaction can become more natural. Pattern interrupt. Now, here's something most no-contact videos won't tell you. Silence isn't powerful by itself. The reason behind your silence matters. If you're silent because you're angry and want her to suffer, that's manipulation. If you're silent because you're trying to make her jealous, that's manipulation. If you're silent because you're counting the minutes until she texts, you're not really detached, you're just waiting. But if you're quiet because you're living your life and allowing the relationship to breathe, that's confidence. So what can happen internally when she notices your reduced attention? Again, there isn't one universal reaction, but several psychological processes are possible. First comes awareness. Something is different. Then possibly comparison. He used to text me more. Then interpretation. Why has that changed? Then maybe curiosity. What is he doing? And depending on how interested she already was, that curiosity may lead to something else. Reflection. She may start thinking about conversations you had, moments you shared, things she liked about you. Or maybe she realizes she actually doesn't miss the interaction. And that is why silence isn't a magic attraction tool. It doesn't create genuine interest from nothing. Instead, it can reveal what already exists. If there was interest, space may give it room to become noticeable. If there wasn't interest, space may simply confirm that. And both outcomes are useful, because you don't want to spend months chasing someone who isn't emotionally available to you. Point number 2, when she starts wondering about you. This is where curiosity can become emotional attention. Suppose you were always around. She knew exactly where she stood with you. Then you became less available. She might start asking herself, did something change? Maybe she checks your social media. Maybe she rereads an old conversation. Maybe she wonders whether you're busy. Maybe she considers sending a message. Or maybe she does absolutely nothing. Again, you cannot control another person's response, and that's the lesson. You aren't trying to control her mind. You're giving her the opportunity to decide whether she actually wants your presence. Story. Imagine a man named Daniel. Daniel met a woman he really liked. At first, everything felt exciting. He texted her every morning, he asked about her day, he sent funny videos, he checked whether she had eaten. Whenever she took a little longer to respond, he sent another message. He thought he was showing interest, but over time, she became less responsive. Daniel became more anxious, so he texted even more. Eventually, he realized something. He wasn't building a relationship anymore. He was trying to get reassurance. So he stopped chasing. Not as a strategy. He simply returned his attention to his own life. He went back to his work. He spent time with friends. He started exercising again. He stopped checking his phone every 5 minutes. A week later, she messaged him. But here's the important part. Daniel didn't celebrate because his silence strategy worked. He realized something more valuable. He had stopped measuring his worth by her response. And when she came back, he could actually communicate with her calmly. That's confidence. Now, let's talk about possible behaviors. If she notices your absence, she might send you a simple, "Hey," react to one of your stories, ask what you've been doing, bring up an old conversation, send you a meme, ask whether you're okay, make an excuse to start talking, or she might directly say, "You disappeared." These behaviors can sometimes indicate that your absence was noticed, but don't overinterpret one message. A "hey" doesn't automatically mean "I can't live without you." It could simply mean "I noticed you weren't around." The healthiest approach is to look at the pattern, not one isolated action. Does she consistently initiate? Does she ask questions? Does she make time for you? Does she remember things about you? Does she try to continue conversations? Does she make an effort to see you? Those behaviors tell you much more than a single text. The psychology of emotional attention. Here's something fascinating about attention. Your brain doesn't simply pay attention to everything equally. Attention is selective. Things that feel emotionally relevant tend to stand out. That's why you can be surrounded by hundreds of people and still immediately notice one specific person. That's why a particular notification can instantly grab your attention. And that's why changes in someone's behavior can sometimes become noticeable. If someone has become emotionally relevant to you, their absence may carry more psychological weight. But there's another side to this. If you constantly demand someone's attention, you may actually create pressure. Healthy connection needs room. Think about breathing. You can't inhale forever. You need to exhale. Relationships can be similar. Connection, space. Connection, space. Conversation, quiet. Togetherness, independence. Healthy relationships aren't built from constant contact. They're built from meaningful contact. Myth/twist. Silence is not a secret attraction hack. Now let's destroy one of the biggest myths. If you ignore a woman, she'll automatically become more attracted to you. No, that's not how human psychology works. Silence cannot manufacture compatibility. It cannot create emotional maturity. It cannot turn disinterest into love. And it cannot replace communication. In fact, using silence intentionally to punish someone can damage trust.
Imagine someone you care about suddenly stops responding because they want you to feel anxious. Would that make you trust them more? Probably not. You might be confused. You might feel rejected. You might become frustrated. You might even lose interest. So if your goal is a healthy relationship, don't weaponize silence. Use space differently. Use it to create balance. Healthy space versus silent treatment. There's a huge difference between these two. Silent treatment. I want you to suffer because I'm angry. Healthy space. I need some time to myself, but we're okay. Silent treatment creates insecurity. Healthy space creates breathing room. Silent treatment is designed to control. Healthy space respects both people. Silent treatment avoids communication. Healthy space can actually improve communication. For example, instead of disappearing for 2 days after an argument, you could say, I don't want to say something I don't mean. Let me take some time and we can talk later. That's mature. You aren't punishing her. You're regulating yourself. And that kind of emotional control is far more attractive than pretending not to care. When silence can reveal genuine interest, here's where things get interesting. Sometimes your absence doesn't create interest, it reveals it. Imagine you stop initiating conversations for a while. Not because you're playing a game, you simply stop carrying the entire interaction. And then you notice. She starts initiating, she asks about your day, she checks in, she sends you something because it reminded of you, she suggests meeting. She notices that you've been quieter. These behaviors may indicate that she values your presence. And there's a powerful lesson here. You don't always need to chase clarity. Sometimes giving someone room to act tells you more than asking them repeatedly how they feel, because behavior is information. So, what signs might indicate that she has noticed? Sign number 1, she initiates more. If you normally started every conversation and she suddenly begins starting them herself, that's meaningful. Sign number 2, she mentions your absence. She might say, "Where have you been? You've been quiet. I haven't heard from you." That's direct evidence that she noticed a change. Sign number 3, she creates conversation. She doesn't just send, "Hey," she actually tries to keep the conversation going. Sign number 4, she asks about your life. She becomes curious about what you've been up to. Sign number 5, she makes effort. She doesn't just talk, she takes action. Maybe she suggests meeting. Maybe she calls. Maybe she finds a reason to spend time with you. And that last one is especially important because genuine interest eventually shows up through effort.
Why confidence matters more than chasing. Let's talk about confidence. Real confidence isn't, "I don't need women." That's often insecurity wearing a mask. Real confidence is, "I like you, but I don't need to abandon myself to make you like me." You can care, you can be romantic, you can be affectionate, you can send the first message, you can tell someone you miss them. None of those things make you weak. The problem begins when your entire emotional state depends on their response. If she replies quickly, you're happy. If she doesn't, you're devastated. If she likes your post, you feel valuable. If she doesn't, you question yourself. That's not confidence. That's emotional dependence. Confidence means your life remains meaningful whether someone texts you tonight or not. And ironically, that's often what makes your attention more valuable, because you're giving it freely, not desperately. What to do if she reaches out? Now imagine you've stopped chasing, and she reaches out. What should you do? Don't punish her. Don't reply with, "Wow, look who's back." Don't say, "Took you long enough." Don't deliberately leave her on red for 12 hours, and don't immediately unload all your frustration. Instead, respond normally. If you want to talk, talk. If you're interested, show interest. If she asks what happened, be honest. You can simply say, "I've been focused on a few things lately." That's enough. You don't need a dramatic explanation. You don't need to prove that you're suddenly valuable. And you definitely don't need to turn the interaction into a power struggle. If you want a relationship, act like someone who wants a relationship, not like someone trying to win a psychological battle.
How to respond without playing games. Suppose she says, "You've been quiet lately." You could say, "Yeah, I've had a lot going on, but it's good to hear from you. How have you been?" Simple, warm, confident, no games. Or maybe she says, "I thought you were ignoring me." You could say, "No, nothing like that. I just didn't want to force a conversation when I was busy." Again, mature. The goal isn't to make her nervous. The goal is to create a relationship where both people willingly participate. And if she doesn't reach out, don't panic. Don't send 10 messages. Don't create a fake emergency. Don't post something specifically to make her jealous. Take the information for what it is. Maybe she's busy. Maybe she's not interested. Maybe the connection isn't strong enough. Whatever the reason, your dignity doesn't require you to chase an answer forever. The biggest takeaway: your absence isn't powerful because you're trying to make someone miss you. Your absence becomes meaningful when your presence already had value. Think about that. If you have no connection with someone, disappearing won't magically create one. But if there is genuine connection, creating healthy space can allow both people to recognize what they actually feel. That's why you shouldn't focus on, "How can I make her think about me?" Ask a better question. Am I building a life and a relationship that is worth being part of? That's a much stronger mindset. The real reason people notice absence. People don't necessarily miss a person simply because that person disappeared. They may miss how that person made them feel, the conversations, the laughter, the emotional safety, the attention, the companionship, the excitement, the memories. And this is why chasing someone constantly isn't always the answer. Instead of trying to force yourself into someone's mind, become someone who brings genuine value into someone's life. Be interesting, be emotionally stable, be kind, have goals, have boundaries, have your own world. And when you're with someone, actually be present. Then when you're not there, your absence is naturally noticeable. You don't have to manufacture it. One more important psychological twist. Here's something that can completely change the way you think about this. Sometimes you go silent expecting her to chase you, and instead you discover that you're the one who misses her. And that's useful information too, because silence can reveal your feelings as much as hers. Maybe you realize, "I wasn't actually confident, I was just afraid of losing her." Maybe you realize, "I was texting because I wanted reassurance." Maybe you realize, "I don't even like the relationship, I just like being wanted." That self-awareness is powerful. Healthy dating isn't only about figuring out what another person thinks, it's also about understanding yourself. What you should never do. If you want to use space in a healthy way, avoid these mistakes. Don't disappear after every disagreement. Don't intentionally make her jealous. Don't post fake "I'm happier without you" content. Don't pretend you're too busy to respond when you're not. Don't manipulate response times. Don't use another woman to get attention. Don't threaten to leave just to get reassurance. Don't create anxiety and call it attraction. And don't confuse emotional unavailability with confidence. A person who genuinely has confidence doesn't need psychological tricks. They can communicate directly, they can walk away when necessary, and they can stay when the relationship is healthy. Recap: what you should remember. So let's quickly bring everything together. When you suddenly become less available, she may notice the change. She may become curious. She may wonder what happened. She may think about your previous conversations. She may check whether you've reached out. She may even initiate contact. But none of this is guaranteed. The most important thing isn't making her chase you. It's discovering if the connection is mutual. If you're always chasing, step back. If you're always initiating, create some balance. If she reaches out, respond naturally. If she doesn't, don't destroy your self-respect trying to force an outcome. And most importantly, healthy space is not the same as silent treatment. Space says, "I have my own life." Manipulation says, "I want to control your emotions." Space creates freedom. Games create anxiety, and genuine confidence doesn't need games. Final psychology lesson. Here's the final lesson I want you to remember. You don't become more attractive by pretending you don't care. You become more attractive by genuinely becoming comfortable with who you are. Have your own goals. Have your own friends. Take care of your body. Develop your mind. Build your career. Enjoy your hobbies. Create a life you don't want to escape from. Then, when someone comes into that life, you don't desperately hold on to them. You appreciate them. You communicate with them, you give them attention, and you give them space. Because the healthiest kind of attraction isn't, I need you to chase me. It's, I want you in my life, but I won't lose myself trying to keep you there. That's the difference between insecurity and confidence, between chasing and connection, between manipulation and maturity. And perhaps most importantly, sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't to disappear, it's to stop chasing and simply let someone's actions show you where they truly stand. If this video gave you a different perspective on silence, attraction, and emotional attention, let me know in the comments. Have you ever noticed someone suddenly become more interested after you stopped chasing? And if you enjoyed this psychology breakdown, subscribe to the channel because we're going deeper into relationships, attraction, emotional behavior, and the psychology behind human connection. Remember, don't use silence to manipulate someone. Use space to create balance, and never chase someone so hard that you lose yourself in the process. I'll see you in the next video.